In this release, archaeologist Arman Umarkhodjayev, journalist Dila Ibragimova, and local historian and traveler Kaldan Sadikov will go along the Talas River Valley from its headwaters in the Talas Alatau to the Moinkum Desert as part of the Outdoor KZ expedition. They will be visiting the most attractive tourist sites in Zhytomyr Oblast. They will take you to see the Talas River headwaters in the western Tian Shan glaciers, visit the Akytas Palace complex, the Taraz ancient site and the command center of the Kazakh host. You will be brought to the place where the river dissolves itself in the Moinkum sands without a trace. Central Asia has been attracting adventurers since the times of Marco Polo. In their notes, medieval mavericks filled this semi-mythical area at the world's end with fantastic creatures and unprecedented miracles and riddles. To this day, this mysterious region attracts Western tourists with its landscapes and biological diversity. Together with the Outdoor KZ permanent TV expedition, you will travel to the most picturesque corners of Central Asia, get acquainted with its flora and fauna, and immerse yourselves in the everyday life and traditions of the people living in the wild. Where does the Talas River start and where does it end? It's going like a wall, a dark wall. How to get to the boundless sands from the eternal ice? We are just standing here looking, and now you find yourself entrapped. Where did the Karakhanids hide their treasure? Let's dig, Dila. Go get digging, and I'll be pulling. What can one find at the ancient tower ruins? No one has dug here yet. All digging is over there, and no one's dug here. What do you do when nothing goes right and you lose heart? We'd better take our time staying here, maybe for 2 days rather than 1. Is it comfortable to sit on a stone throne? Should you need help or a butler, see this little button. Beep beep. Kaldan Sadikov, a renowned traveler, decided to answer this as well as other questions. He's going to familiarize ourselves with Talas, Zhytomyr region. The Talas River has its origin on the slopes of the Talas Range. It then goes out to the plains near the city of Taraz and flows through the Piemont Valley to vanish into the sands. It crosses all landscape zones on its way, from eternal ice to boundless deserts, carrying life along, for water means life in arid regions. From the times of yore, people had settled along rivers and lakes where biological diversity was especially lush. They had built cities and caravanserais where irrigation water and fertile soil played in favor of farming. Caravan tracks had met here, while trade and handicraft boomed. On the other hand, though, such livable places had always attracted conquerors. Over the course of history, the Talas River banks had been the gold battleground numerous times. Geopolitical interests of various worlds and civilizations would clash here. The Talas Alatau is the principal range in the western Tian Shan, stretching for 300 kilometers within Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. Its western branches go into Uzbekistan, while in the east, the range joins the Kyrgyz Ridge. There are over 260 glaciers in the Talas Alatau. The sister rivers of Talas and Darsa are born in the same glaciers, although streaming each in its own way. They live their own torrential and adventurous lives. Having become old-age streams, they meet again for a short while to dissipate in the arid Moinkum sands forever. The animal and plant life of the Talas and Kyrgyz ridges is somewhat similar to that of the Transsili Alatau, featuring some traits of the southern mountains of the Pamir type. Here you can see the Tekke mountain goats, so typical of Almaty region, as well as roe deer and bulls. However, biological species characteristic of the southerly latitude, for example porcupine, also begin to appear. Juniper is known as Ağaç to Turkic peoples. Near Almaty, it is a low procumbent shrub, while here the arborescent Ağaç grows up to 5 to 7 meters. Ağaç thickets look like spruce forests from afar. Ever since people took to farming, their life had been integral to the fertile soils of river valleys. The very first farmers in the Talas River Valley appeared about 5,000 years ago. Since then, despite many historical twists, the agricultural process has never ceased for a minute. Even now we see residents of Bayzaksky district, Jambul region harvesting beetroots. Members of the expedition stopped to ask them for directions. This road is ending here, and then you turn right. 1 kilometer after, turn to the left. The lower the road goes down from the mountains, the more densely populated the Talas River Valley becomes. Gradually, villages turn into the suburbs of Taraz. While Rome is nicknamed the Eternal City, Taraz is hardly any younger, just a couple of hundred years. The expedition begins to familiarize itself with Taraz starting from its southeastern outskirts. There is a 14th century mausoleum on the Tektomaz hill on the right bank of the Talas River. It is believed to be the burial place of the Holy Sultan Mahmud Khan. Next to it, archaeologists found some grave sites of the pre-Islamic period. Zoroastrian burial sites date back between the 1st century BC and the 4th century AD. There must have been a city here on the right bank of the Talas River, a city at least 2,000 years old. There was a bridge here during Pontius Pilate's times and a custom office next to the bridge, with tax collectors toiling away day and night. Merchants hated customs officials but realized that without order or security, their goods might fall easy meat to robbers, plentiful in those times. And thereafter, Taraz was located midway from Beijing to Constantinople, about 3,800 kilometers each way. Many Chinese and Byzantine merchants preferred to cut their way by half selling their goods to each other in Taraz. This convenient geographical location, as well as the firm hand of Turgesh Khans, transformed this small town on the Talas River into a trade hub. By the mid-8th century, the Arab Caliphate had conquered most of the Middle East to take Central Asia under control. It bumped up against another powerful force, the army of the now stronger Tang Empire. Finding himself between the devil and the deep blue sea, the Turgesh Khan was first in two minds about taking sides, eventually opting for the Arabs. In 749, the Chinese took Shash, now known as Tashkent, to advance on Taraz. The governor of Khorasan came to help the beleaguered city out with a cavalry squadron. The Arab and Chinese forces equaled in number, and it was the Karluk surprise assault that decided the battle. The stray Chinese troops retreated back into their domain. The Arabs, however, were exhausted too and had to stop short of conquering the Turkic lands. Since then, the Talas River had served as an implicit boundary between sedentary and nomadic civilizations. In 2011, right in the middle of the Taraz city market, archaeologists began excavations of the ancient settlement. They say the Charin Canyon is a living example of geological history. Now then, Taraz is a living example of Central Asia's history. Hardly any city can boast avoiding irreversible destruction for as long as 2,000 years. Sure enough, the history of Taraz had any type of events: fires, invasions, change of political systems, technologies, and religious beliefs. But the city had always stood alive. People continued trading on the main square and going to baths and libraries. Craftsmen continued their work in faubourgs, poets wrote their verses, and customs officers collected dues. The artifacts found include both Arabic religious texts and Christian symbols. This fact suggests that the commercial city of Taraz recognized the common market values in the parlance of our time. And this is where its secret lies. The East met the West here, and the nomadic civilization came across the sedentary. Ancient dwellers of Taraz knew a thing or two not only in economy but also in hygiene. This is an oriental bath, or the hammam. Its water heating system is carefully thought through. The only thing beyond our comprehension is how the medieval architects could pull all these utilities with no transit instruments. Naturally, the city flowered under the Karakhanids. Karakan, a humble guy of the Turkic tribe of Karluks, had made his way in military service, and his sharp sword and trusty steed helped him found an empire spanning from the Aral Sea to the Mongolian Altai. History has not preserved any record of his true name. He was called by title Karakan. The first part, Kara, means mighty, and Khan stands for the sovereign. Karakan's descendants had ruled until Genghis Khan's invasion. The legend says that having heard the Mongols coming, they loaded all their treasures on 40 camels and headed for the mountains. And nobody saw them ever after. One shepherd is said to have witnessed those camels near the Akhe-Taz palace complex. On hearing about the 40 camels, we set off to Akhe-Taz right away. It's not too far away, about 40 kilometers from Taraz. If you go straight along the Western China, Western Europe International Highway, you get to Beijing. But if you turn right near the Aksholak railway station, you get to Akhe-Taz. As soon as we spotted a butte in the foothills, the words of Karl Moldakmerovich Baypakov came to our minds. Akhe-Taz was first mentioned in 1221, during Genghis Khan's campaign. Not far from the city of Taraz, we came across a rocky site of ancient settlement on the way, Chanchun Road. The rocks are deep red in color. There are traces of an ancient encampment. And here we are, standing in the same place Chanchun was standing 800 years ago. We are not quite clear about who and why built all this, but we feel it's not just an ordinary place. In 2014, UNESCO endorsed this project at the request of Central Asian countries and China. The decision was made to include the Great Silk Road into the list of World Heritage Sites. Its very first leg is China Central Asia, and so, as Akhe-Taz in Jambul Oblast lies on the Silk Road route, it was included into the list of nominated sites. 800 years have passed since Chanchun described Akhe-Taz, but scientists still remain at odds over who actually is behind that. There are tons of hypotheses about its purpose. It had been mentioned back in the mid-19th century. Arman and Dila made their minds to explore each clue. I've heard an interesting hypothesis about the purpose of building Akhe-Taz, and in my opinion, it deserves consideration. It goes as follows. We don't know who built it, although we do know why it was built. Now here we are standing in the quarry which provided rock blocks to build Akytas. And what's the theory? Here it is. Construction of Akytas was a diversionary maneuver. They took rocks from here to show they were building something. In fact, they were making a huge cave. Once they took a sufficient amount of rock from here, they loaded some treasure and heaped it round. You must be seeing all sorts of people coming here. Oh, all types. And generally this one is twisted. And I hear the place is frequented by psychic mediums and witch doctors. Witch doctors, clairvoyants, you name it. Do you personally believe in this? I'm an old communist. That is, you hold it as rubbish. Well, I see them treat people here. They brought a man in their hands. Next time he was helped to walk, and the third time he walked on his own. Akytas earned its status as the place of strength back in the early 1990s, in the heyday of mysticism. The place is now visited by believers, followers of esoteric theories, and UFO eyewitnesses. The hear says someone was crying here, and his teardrops broke through the rock. And Vale says they were here back in the 1980s, and there was nothing here. And then women who could not give birth would suddenly become pregnant in 3 or 4 days. One person's wife gave birth when she was 50. I really don't know if I should believe that. Now I'm a young pilot, and we're flying, and my cap is next to me, and there is a flying saucer right above, so close. My captain was scared so much he could not fly anymore thereafter, and the saucer was seen 2 more times right here. Why is it flying here? Scientists say it may mean there is a lot of energy here. They say Akytas generates energy. Oh, I see. And the saucers come here to recharge their batteries and go back, yeah? And they go back. There must be a fault. They must be attracted by it. They need some kind of energy. And do you feel this energy? Not yet. Not me. Traces of the old quarry can be seen on top of the only hill around. It's not quite clear how those granite blocks, each weighing several tons, were brought up to Akytas. You look at these huge stone slabs and wonder. It is kind of a mystery due to its unique nature, location in a very peculiar place and wonderful layout. A lot of legends are associated with it. And while talking about the scientist's viewpoint on the site, we never assert that some view is final and decisive. As the phrase goes, let's dig and see. Now this one looks like a Kariz, an underground water delivery system. By the way, where did water come to it from, since there is not a single creek or stream nearby? Arman, I'm still haunted by this water channel. Was there some kind of a pond or river here? The palace was built more than 1,000 years ago. Hydrography could have changed altogether since then. There might have been creeks in those times here, and their dry beds can still be seen. In other words, they could have built such an aqueduct running for 20 kilometers from the mountains. I don't know what they could have done, but it would be much easier to dig an irrigation ditch for the people living in the 7th or 8th century. Getting ready for the expedition, we learned different versions of the Akytas origin. Some authors wrote it was an unfinished Nestorian monastery, while the others asserted it was a fortified caravanserai built with the money of merchants who used the Great Silk Road. We wondered about Akytas for 2 hours in a brown study. Which version should we stick to in our program?
Ну и была еще одна точка зрения, такой археолог Брентис, немецкий археолог.
Well, there was yet another standpoint. The German archaeologist Burkhard Brentius hypothesized that Akytas was a military fortress built by the Arabs. Qutayba, a famous conqueror, initiated its construction to gain a foothold on eastern edges of the Arab Caliphate. The Arabs had conquered Central Asia and Turkestan and were reaching out for eastern Turkestan. In the east, they had made it to Mekhe, and in the north, they reached Turkestan. Having spent about 3 hours roaming in the Akytas ruins, we realized that we could spend the rest of our lives trying to resolve its riddles while the time could not wait, including the time for our expedition. Our experience prompted we'd better side with knowing people in any disputable situation. This is why we agreed with Mr. Brentius. Qutayba? Alright, so be it Qutayba. Qu'est-ce qu'un passé? And we are in for an enthralling trip to the lower reaches of the Talas River. Kaldan Sadikov has invited all expedition members to visit his home village of Togeskent in Sarısü district, Jambul region. His brothers Dastan and Isatay live and farm in the village. They breed horses and manage a big orchard. In the Soviet period, the village used to be a state-owned farm specializing in karakul sheep breeding. The silky karakul from Togeskent has been one of the best furs in Kazakhstan and was exported to Hungary under a contract. In the late 1990s, the plummeting demand for the furs undermined karakul sheep breeding. It took farmers quite a few years to switch over to horse breeding. And a new, unprecedented business has of late found its way to the village: tourism. City guests have always come to the village to hunt, fish, have some kumas, fermented mare's milk, or go for a ride around its scenic surroundings. But nowadays, savvy travel agents realize that fishing, hunting, and immersion tourism are in high demand in the domestic and international markets. And so they frequently approach locals, asking them to arrange some exotic travel for tourists. While demand breeds supply, and some locals began breaking new ground to become tour operators. The success has been modest so far, but the trend has been set. Web forums flash headlines and pictures of big pikes caught near Togeskent. Immersion tourism is gradually gaining momentum. The ancient land of the Talas is permeated with history and has a lot to offer to the lovers of antiquity and enthusiasts of exotics. The Akesene Tower is 30 kilometers northeast of the village. Akesene stands for the White Mausoleum, although it had most probably been a military watchtower rather than a mausoleum. It offers an excellent view around and above. There was always a sentry in the tower to set fire to the firewood duly prepared in advance. A good plume of smoke can be seen for dozens of kilometers out in the steppes. The tower is adjoined by small living quarters for the guards and a fortified wall enabling the tower defenders to ward off attacks for some time. The tower dates back to the 10th through the 12th centuries. Just a few kilometers away from it, there are ruins of yet another tower similar in design, the Kokkesene. While the former tower offered a good view of the southeast, the latter focuses on the northwest. Over the last centuries, the tower has been badly damaged by rains and winds. But it was renovated a few years ago, and today it is a tourist landmark in its own right, which attracts travelers to Sarısu district. No foes seen afar, no trouble heard on the borders, so the expedition can smoothly go on. Sarısu district dwellers believe Mount Kumistobe is sacred. It must be a very old belief. The Bronze Age and the early Iron Age artifacts attest that people have inhabited these places for many thousand years. The solitary mountain overlooking the Talas Valley was not only sacred but also important from the military point of view. It is easy to depict commanders of the Kazakh army watching the tide of battles from atop the hill. Legend has it that a battle took place somewhere here during the warfare between the Kazakhs and the Jungars. The exact location of the battle is not known, as no full-scale excavations have ever been carried out, but the area will get a more detailed scrutiny over the coming years under the Tuganjer program. Kaldan Sardikov plans to make a map of cultural and historical sites in his region, develop tourist-oriented programs, and involve locals in building the tourist cluster in the region. Of course, preliminary exploration can hardly be held as full-scale excavations, but Arman Umarkodjaev makes use of every idle moment to swipe his metal detector across the vicinity, trying to find something new. This time the yield is miserable, an old bullet and a horseshoe nail. But who knows, this horseshoe might as well bring good luck to the explorer. Now we found two artifacts in 20 minutes, one medieval bullet and a nail like that. The expedition is striking into the steppe. The landscapes are gradually changing, the steppe turning into a desert. Once Togiskent is left behind, the rivers of Talas and Dasa fall into hundreds of arms to form floodplains inhabited by wetland animals. Rivers, lakes, islands, droves of horses, reeds, ancient ruins, years and centuries make up a full-blooded tourist system known as the Talas Valley. We are now approaching the place where the Talas Valley ends and the great Moyunkum Sands are born. We've come up to a unique place, Yagezhal. Everything looks different here, more rugged. Of all bigger animals, it is only goited gazelles, saiga antelopes, wolves and foxes that can survive in this parched desert. It may look dry and arid at first glance, but first appearances are deceptive. In fact, the desert is also full of life. It has a lot of mysteries and riddles strewn with the sands of time. It's the first Zhao, and then we have more Zhao, and more, and so forth. Yagezhal stands for the stallion's mane. It does indeed have something in common. Now this plant is called the Ilan. It looks like that and can grow taller or a little bit smaller. Let's dig, Diля. Go get digging, and I'll be pulling. Its texture is like that of a banana. John the Baptist survived in the desert living on locusts and wild honey. Unfortunately, we did not find any honey or locusts, or any shrimp, only the elan. In fact, it turned out living on whatever crumbs one can get in a desert is not the best way to go. Here we are, standing and looking. We can see the horizon, and suddenly you find yourself entrapped. That's it. Can't see for a meter ahead. People begin panicking. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. The Talas too runs into a sea of sand. We had been on the shore of that sea and saw it was boundless too. It looks lifeless, but the impression is deceptive. It is full of life, mysteries and riddles waiting to be resolved.